Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to cover what will seem like a very trivial topic, and for those of you coming in through some need to study official science, this will not get you an A in class, most likely. I mean, I'm going to go through some of the formal things, of course, but we're going to jump off quickly into alternate theories because that's what makes this interesting. What are planets? Now, my immediate family, my mother and my father, neither one of them cared much about science in any way, shape, or form. I never heard them ever mention anything about space. Yeah, they might love 2001: A Space Odyssey or read a book that's sci-fi, but never anything what's on Mars, any of that shit. But I had an uncle. He was into everything. He and I are probably very, very similar as total human beings. So he brought me a lot of subatomic physics and just odds and ends here and there. If I mentioned something, he'd say, oh yeah, you know what they think about that? Da, 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 da. So very official. And then by my mid-teens, I had devoured books and books and books on everything from black holes to quasars to, all modern theories of, astronomy and cosmology. In the 90s, I jumped off into, again, unified theory research. I mean, like a 15-year project of my own. So when Eric Dollard pops out and brings us all this ancient knowledge about how they figured out the universe is full of ether that behaves similarly to water, that is responsible for dielectric and magnetic waves that then collide and become electromagnetism, which then is the electrical universe, it made complete and utter sense. I mean, it is so fucking blatantly obvious. If you have an IQ and you think you're smart / intelligent, which is usually the definition they want to believe about themselves, and if you just read as a cosmologist the theories on ether and then look at all the unsolved mysteries and then immediately apply the ether to all the unsolved mysteries, you will immediately see a one-to-one correlation. I could teach this for the rest of my life in colleges around the world without bringing a textbook. I could just pull it out of my head and prove to the world this is the way it works. Because it is so blatantly obvious, that's the way it's put together. But then we move into the 21st century. Things are pretty calm until about 4 or 5 years ago. Now, there's always been conspiracy stuff online, a lot of good, truthful conspiracies that we need to short circuit. But the ones that are very interesting, like flat Earth theory, which again is an old idea being rehashed, because people don't feel like they're moving, and they don't feel like they're, they don't understand gravity, so they think it doesn't exist. When you explain ethereal models, it just doesn't get it. It doesn't compute. Again, a bubble in water. If you understand how that's occurring, you understand exactly how Earth could exist in this primordial ooze, which we call ether. It's the same exact laws of physics. And it has nothing to do with what they tell you gravity is. I mean, what's unbelievable is they say that Satanists reverse everything. Well, taking gravity and making it a pull instead of a push is a satanic flip of what ether does and how we see everything else work in the universe. I mean, it's just hilarious. They got everyone backwards, and then they got everyone fighting wars over it, and then you get stupid entities like black holes, event horizons, singularities, big bangs, and then of course dark matter is this gigantic patch on everything because none of this shit works. Their theories don't work. Now, my friends who believe in flat Earth in my local community, there's some really smart people who I look at them and they're sort of way past the bashful phase anymore about saying what they believe. Of course, they trust me too, and I'm not judgmental, so there's no worry about that. But I love it when I say, like, we won't sit around and just fester on it and talk about it. We did at one point, but one of my closest friends who's he just recently retired. I mean, he probably has 35 years of, maybe even 45 years of work history building power plants and all kinds of industrial refineries, and he's like one of the lead architects of this sort of technology. He's lived in Australia and Asia, and I mean, Europe and America. I mean, he's been all over the freaking world. He's lived there years and years each time he moved around. Very smart, very enlightened, has seen more of the world than most people that I know that aren't celebrities. And especially because he's not only visited, but he lived there. He lived in Australia for years, lived in South Korea for years, Japan for years. It would appear that the local airport from Long Beach has routed all the planes over my fucking house today, which is extremely rare, so we'll see if that becomes a routine problem. But it's the Flat Earth movement, which is interesting. And of course, you know, the Flat Earth is supposedly, you know, it's definitely the very first model of the world. Because what perspective could you possibly have of the world that you're in when you look at the world and it's a plane of existence that goes seemingly forever? You don't see any curvature because you're way too fucking close to the surface. So you're going to theorize a flat Earth. Because the brain doesn't like infinity, we make it something that loops, which might be a disk with a barrier of ice around it. Now, the round Earth thing is only 500 years old, roughly, thanks to Galileo Galilei. And it's now been, you know, in the conspiracy realms, it's a Jesuit conspiracy, and it's to flip, I guess, our perception of where we are and to demonetize God out of our lives and make it, you know, make us feel like we're at their behest. We can't do anything without the ruling class. And it is interesting because that's most definitely the theme of every other place in your life, right? Socialism and globalism is all about this: suck the tit of your government, fear your government, ask your government for everything when you're given barely anything to sustain yourself with. That's just something you got to deal with. Surrender your children into the school systems and preschool systems as soon as possible, because we no longer have a single income household, we have a dual income household. They're now trying to force vaccinations on your kids. They fluoridate us, they poison us with the food, they give you cancer, then they kill you with chemotherapy. They're always on top of you and always controlling you. So this idea of Flat Earth being a movement to separate you from God is actually thematically extremely accurate, or at least plausible in one way or another. But we have this little thorn on our sides if you want to believe in the Flat Earth thing. And again, if you're all upset about Flat Earth, again, just hang in there. I make equal opportunity videos. But the thorn in the side of a Flat Earther are planets, because they're up there, they're round, and they rotate. And you can see them. As long as you have enough money to buy a nice telescope in your backyard, you can see them. Okay. Now, the idea that we had these celestial bodies in space goes back a couple thousand years BC, inside Babylonian times. Over the years, it's been refined and refined and refined. Religion came in and tried to kill it for a little while. Copernicus got in trouble. So, I mean, a bunch of people got in trouble. Then all of a sudden it became a globe in the flat earther world of European history. Planets have had recently, you know, this reclassification, how big they have to be, what sort of relationship they have with the rest of the solar system, whether or not they have moons. And now we have dwarf planets, which is what Pluto's been turned into. But we look up in the sky, we see a round sun. We look at it through lenses, it rotates. We got a round moon, which is the weirdest goddamn thing in the sky because it just faces us. It's just like that weird stranger that would just stare at you and never blink. That's kind of how the moon works. And it's perfectly the size of the sun, so when it eclipses, it's like angels sing, and it's the exact same size, even though, you know, one's supposed to be 93 million miles away. One's supposed to be 237,000 miles away in an elliptical orbit of all things, and it still eclipses the sun every single time. And the thing is that this notion that they're not what they seem to be, okay, we're going to go through that. In the 90s, I used to subscribe to Astronomy magazine. I couldn't really afford a telescope. My cousin had a little tiny one. We started looking at stars. Very depressing because they're just little balls of light. I mean, they're pinpoints, right? Very anticlimactic. Because you think, I don't know what the hell we thought. We're going to see fucking Star Destroyers? I don't know. When you join sort of the amateur astronomy communities out there, you suddenly realize, look, a ton of people are out there teaching astronomy, from high schools to colleges. There's groups that just get together in their backyards, out in fields, deserts where there's no light pollution or very little light pollution, and they confirm things. If someone says, oh, this is going to be in the sky at this particular point in time, get your telescopes out. They do it. They put mechanical motors on them. They put their cameras on them. They run them into the laptops nowadays. And so there's a tremendous amount of confirmation of at least the basics of astronomy. Now, again, we all know no average person outside of the NASA organization has beheld the Earth from a far enough away distance that it looks like a blue marble in space. I don't think any astronauts have done it. I don't think any humans have done it. Now, we've seen 250 miles up beautiful supposed pictures of the Earth, and it rotates and all this other stuff. But then again, that's all suspect because there's no goddamn stars in the shot. There's no Milky Way in the shot. And if you're in the ISS, there's no moon in the shot. Now, somebody did submit a still, I believe, to our Facebook page, which was claimed to be out of the one place where you could, the little window, sort of, it looks like the Millennium Falcon deck window that's facing towards the Earth on the ISS, and it was way over in the distance, and it was just someone just cut and pasted the moon there. Maybe that's real, maybe it's not. Why you wouldn't want an observatory exactly the same, pointing up towards space, is absolutely beyond me. You mean you have a space station? I mean, imagine this. You got a space station, and there's an incoming bad object. Fuck, maybe it's even an armada of UFOs, and we call up there, hey guys, can you see anything? And they're like, we don't have any windows on that side. We forgot to build windows on the other side. What side? The side that faces most of reality, away from the Earth, which is where most other things exist. So he's pretty damn intentional to hide the shortcomings of a hoax. So what are the official stories of planets? Well, there's a couple different theories. One would be that an object actually got into orbit around the sun, and so instead of slamming into the sun, the vector is just perfect, and this object will get in orbit and then gain mass over time because it's pulling, right? And it starts to solidify into a sphere because they understand that gravity creates spheres. They don't understand how it happens, but it does. And then the other one is that as the whatever central burst occurred to create the sun, again, theory, that the remnants of the rings somehow coalesced into a single object on a ring format and became these gas giants. Yet they still say gas giants have solid rock cores and all this other stuff. For me, it just sounds completely wrong, complete bullshit. It doesn't make any physical sense. Anything I've ever read about what they think creates planets. Quite frankly, I don't think we cracked it at all. They tell you the gas giants are baby planets. They haven't really figured out how to become Earth yet. They still suck their thumb out there in space because they deny electrical universe theories, which then denies, it prevents you from learning things about expanding Earth theory, and the fact that all celestial objects most likely have a plasma core, at just exactly like the sun. The sun is a plasma core. It is black inside. That is why sunspots are black, and they have no ejection of matter from them. Earth is most likely hollow with a plasma core. The moon we know is hollow, but I think it has a plasma core. Now, what happens if you were to continually inflate the inner workings of the Earth like a balloon? Except there is no skin of the balloon like a skin of the balloon actually works. It's this sort of dusty crust on the outside. Why is there a crust? Because plasma is moving at an extremely fast pace and hasn't decided kind of what it is yet. And as it makes a decision, it slows down. It becomes magma. The magma gets pulverized through shifting of the outer surface by expansion, maybe pulverizing itself or rubbing together. Eventually goes from atomic elements to atomic compounds, and we start having all kinds of interesting metals, dirts. So what would happen if you continually inflated the interior of the Earth and the Earth couldn't create a crust fast enough? Maybe you would get a gas. We know there's tons of methane gas between the inner core of the Earth and the surface, and we know when you crush that with carbon, you get crude oil. It's not a fossil fuel. It is a byproduct of the Earth. All right. For me, the inverse is true about gas giants. They are not baby planets. They are extremely old planets, and they have simply ruptured their internal core. I should say they've ruptured their external crust. Said the wrong thing there. And now they are simply gathering material because they displace so much ethereal winds that they've created a negative pressure around themselves. And so here comes all this base atomic / ethereal particle matter that then, through the crushing pressure of other ethereal matter coming in from space, it can become all kinds of interesting things. Anything that's technically possible in a way of chemistry, alchemy, whatever, it's happening on the surface of these gigantic planets. Now, is Jupiter likely a 100% gas giant? Well, the official story is no. It has a rocky core in the center. I would say, if it is true that the 3 huge asteroids that hit it, I guess 15, 20 years ago, can't remember exactly what time that happened, one of them was the size of Earth, and it just got swallowed up. I mean, there's a blemish on the surface, but just gets swallowed up inside this gigantic ball of dust. Man, that's one powerful ass planet. So now we know all the basic stuff, right? So the theories of moons and how they orbit, it evolved over time. It went from circular orbits to elliptical orbits. We went from like 5 planets to 8 planets to 11 planets, back to 9 planets, then now to 8 planets. So all that stuff is kind of incidental. No one needs to make a video about that in our world of the truther movement. But now, let's put a toe in the water of what else could they be? They're definitely there. Are they there to deceive us? I don't know. Like I said in a previous episode about the Matrix, I believe, what would it matter if there were no stars in the sky at all? Douglas Adams wrote, as part of his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a civilization that never looked up, never saw a single star. And so when they were visited by some of the characters in the book, they couldn't understand the words coming out of the character's mouth when they say, where are you from? And they're like, we're from up there. And they didn't have any concept for up there. Intriguing. What if there were no planets and stars? What if it was simply black at night up in the sky? You wouldn't have any concept in your mind that there is something outside of here. All right. Well, now here's the thing. If theories of the firmament dome were real, why would God create stars? Why would he do it? Put a sun up there. If you really feel like you need some other object, put a moon up there. They're circling around inside the snow globe that is the flat Earth model. But why create a Milky Way? Why create planets? It's just going to confuse the situation. Someone might immediately respond and say, "Oh, it's a trick by the devil to throw us off." Okay, so God's like, okay, I'll make the humans and then you fuck with them. A friend of mine recently said, God doesn't test man. I said, the fuck he doesn't. And when you look at the Bible, holy Jesus, it's packed full of tests. Moses coming down with the 10 Commandments and looking at everyone worshiping the golden calf, and he says, you got like 5 fucking seconds to get the fuck away from that thing and come over here with my deal, or I'm going to destroy your ass. That's a test. When he tells a father to murder his child to prove his loyalty, what a motherfucker God would be at that point. Seriously, I would disown him. And you get right down to you're putting the dagger right through your kid's fucking throat. That's a test. Sorry. Didn't Noah, I mean, it's all fake bullshit, but like, didn't Noah have a phrase where he's like, hey, everybody, get in my boat because it's going to rain. We're going to go and, have funky sex. See you later. Feels like a test. The tree in the Garden of Eden. Holy shit. That's the biggest fucking test I've ever seen in my life. Okay, I'm making you imperfect creatures, but I'm putting you in this world called Eden, and I have one rule, and rules by definition are perfect, and you're imperfect, therefore you're going to break this rule. So that just means I'm a big asshole. And then I built a total Western version of Christianity that says that because you did what was mathematically a certainty, you suffer forever. And you got to go through this eye of the needle over here and this eye of the needle over there just to get back to me. I mean, like, I don't know. If it's a game and you really can't get hurt and you always end up in heaven, okay, then maybe that's all right. It's like a really bad scavenger hunt, right? God tests us in the Bible. Real life? I don't know. I think he just leaves us alone, creates a world. Maybe we did it. The planets and stars. The universe. I mean, a theory occurred to me. I'm not being super serious about this, but it just did occur to me that if the firmament dome was sort of like this, made of some substance, it's almost like you're in an eggshell. And if you were in an eggshell and you had consciousness and you look out, obviously the sun will be out there from time to time, and maybe the shell has some little permeable thin areas where these little sun specks come through. It looks like stars, but then that wouldn't account for these planetoid things. You have the Saturn has rings, and the rings of Saturn actually have these mosaics that go through the rings. But supposedly, these rings are independent ice particles and asteroids that are all crushed really tiny, maybe from whatever the hell made this planet. Supposedly, planet with the hexagon on top. Sure looks like ethereal winds, doesn't it? So let's say you lay out a bunch of stones, super thin, sun's shining on them, but there are these gusts of like ethereal winds that are going through the rings. And it's just simply making a signature of itself. Could be that it goes through and organizes them in a particular way such that that pattern stays in them. So it's like a tattoo from ethereal winds touching them. Which could be construed as electrical waves as well, depending on the form in which they were when they slammed into each other. So they're either one of two things. They're an incidental object in space, or they are a great cabal, and they've been seen way before the Jesuits ever existed. So which one's more likely? Which one's more likely? The thing is the further you go back in history, the more God is around talking to people. What's up, dude? Nothing, man. I'm washing my car. Yeah? That's cool. Hey, do you believe in me? Well, yeah, sure, man. We're fucking talking. Why the hell wouldn't I believe in you? Well, I just thought I'm bored up here. And according to Christians, I am absolutely the biggest dick on planet Earth. So I thought, I got to do some dicky things here because otherwise I don't want to lose my reputation. Got to have my pimp hand strong. And where's your kid, by the way? He's probably playing around back. Okay, why don't you go get him? All right. Okay. Well, here he is. Okay, you have a knife? Oh, fuck it. Here's a knife. Woof. Stab that kid in the head. What? Stab him in the head. Well, why? Because, I don't know. If you believe in me, you'll stab your kid in the head. Oh. Okay. I guess you'll hurt me if I don't. Yeah, I'll fucking kill your ass if you don't. And I'll make hell just for you, man. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. I was just kidding. So God's had these weird definitions by mankind. But these are some of the same people who fucking theorize about what planets are. You see how I want you to disengage from any organized religion so that you could think about God and completely quarantine beautiful things? What's interesting about the theme of why people get to flat Earth from round Earth. And I'm sorry, this is kind of turning this, but we have to approach the planets from a paradigm. They say, I don't believe the world is round and it's spinning. And I say, why? Because I can't sense it and I haven't seen it. Okay, awesome. Why is this existing? Well, because the Jesuits or the elite bankers or the Rothschilds, they want us not to believe in God. They want us to believe in them. And so we're stuck in their world and they control us. And it's like, okay, well, that does match the theme of a lot of the rest of the world. But now let's think about it. You believe the world is flat because you haven't seen and experienced all this other stuff that they say is occurring. But you believe in God and the devil and all that shit in the Bible when you can't see and you've never heard it and you never had God come down and just stand there like George Burns and talk to you. But Christ, that stuff is fucking real. Jesus Christ really existed. But there's no recorded history of him ever existing for 350 years. It's even gone up further. They can't really find any documentation of this guy existing in the real fucking world. And your imaginary, oh, my priest told me this shit that you can't ever find the fucking proof of. So we have a logic loop problem. If you want to say that your thinking is logical and then you can only observe reality, and that's the only thing you're going to take in as reality, then you got to take organized religion, all these fake fucking saviors that they keep throwing at you, right? Again, Jesus Christ is like the 27th version of that virgin birth story. Throw that shit away so that you can think clearly about God. Obviously, something really amazing is going on here. All life is beautiful. Can't you feel love in your heart? And you know that stuff isn't tangible. You can't put it in a jar and sell it to people. Otherwise, you'd be the richest person in the universe. So, heliocentric, globe Earth, and planets, and stars, and a universe. Forget Big Bang, all those goddamn lies they tell you. But the rest of it, we're looking at something in space. If that can only be allowed in because you have to see it, then you're in a non-faith-based religion. If you have to believe it and you can't see it, then it's a faith-based religion. Well, if you're rejecting the faith-based religion, with flying air quotes around the word science, which I completely respect that, because science is now full of more tenure lying professors than ever in the history of this goddamn planet, at least for the last 500 years. I respect that. Go with your instinct. Nothing will ever negate the existence of God, in my opinion. Just because you figure out how he did it doesn't mean he doesn't exist. But that's what scientists want to believe, because their hubris is, I will become more powerful than God as soon as I become God myself. And that makes me feel good and smart and intelligent and impotent. But now, what is a planet when you look at it with your eyes? It's a ball, which has a surface. It does seem to rotate. Again, amateur astronomers can see these things rotate. But that's all you really know about it. It's a ball with a paint job that rotates. And they seem to be out there distributed. Pluto's a little smaller. Now, what's really funny is when I was a teenager in high school, they always told me that Pluto was anything but round. It was a bizarre shape, and some people even theorized it might have been like a binary planet system with two things kind of rolling together. But then when they gave us this cartoony goddamn shot of Pluto, the Disney character, on the surface of this fake planet, of the fake rendering of the planet, we're supposed to think that's real. What other things can we see in space? See with our own eyes, through big giant telescopes that you could purchase in your backyard. Well, oddly enough, the one thing I have never heard anyone claim to be able to see, and I certainly have not seen it with my own eyes, are things called galaxies. Oh, I've seen thousands of pictures of galaxies online, thousands of pictures of galaxies in books, but I have never put my eyeball up to an optic that isn't, at all, of any incarnation, a lens telescope, a reflector telescope, some digital, array telescope in the desert. I have never seen a galaxy. But I have been shown these photos with like hundreds of galaxies all flippity-floppity in space. seems highly improbable if there was some singularity Big Bang in which all matter is distributed evenly around the universe. How are all the galaxies all cockeyed in different orientations? Maybe there's logic to that. One could just say, well, as it blew apart, it became completely ununified. The most perfect singularity thing in the world exploded, and nothing looks singularity-based or unified after the fact. Could there be something completely different than just some space dust out there that's pushed itself into a ball? Could it be an alternate universe inside? Could that be what the paint job looks like when you look at it from the outside? They say that Saturn is so sparse in its density that it would float on the ocean. That's pretty sparse, wouldn't you say? Now, what's interesting about our moon is that even though it's not a planet, it's still a celestial object in space. Although smaller, it still has to be created by the same exact principles that a planet is created by. So we have sort of this really close neighbor that you can analyze to figure out what the other stuff is. And of course, the moons around, the other planets, the bigger planets. Again, I think it's just a funny thing to say a pig is a pig until I think he reaches about 100 pounds or so, and then he's called a hog. I think farms throughout the United States differ on that opinion. 100, 150 pounds. It's still a fucking pig. It's a swine. But we give it different designations as it gets larger and larger and larger. Okay, so the moon is a pig, and all the planets are hogs. Pluto's somewhere in the middle. Whatever's holding them in orbit is the same exact science. Whatever makes them round is the same exact science. Whatever makes them rotate is the exact same science. I think that's fascinating. It makes it easier to do this conversation, doesn't it? And then, supposedly, we live on a disk. I think that's where most people struggle with the flat earth theory. The more that you have a theory that doesn't match any physical model, then you really have a very broken theory of how things are all put together. For me, having delved into this at great depths for the natural theories of cosmology, especially related to the electrical universe and ether, for the very first time in my life, all this unknown burden on my chest of being frustrated that I live in a world with gravity, but I couldn't figure out what the hell it was, it is all gone. It is all gone. I feel so clean inside, I can't even tell you. When you get to flat Earth, you get into another quagmire. Man, if you thought heliocentric pole gravity models were tumultuous for the soul, remember, when you think truth, you have a clear flowing energy going through you. When you think a lie, or something that's incorrect, I shouldn't say lie necessarily, but something that's incorrect, you have like a Swiss watch that's all clunkety clunk inside and it's not keeping time at all. If we were in some sort of disk snow globe, then we aren't in anything related to any theory of anything. We are in God's matrix, if that were the case. And we can't explain. I mean, imagine it was this, and one, you got to figure out what's underneath. Is it a snow globe on top, and then underneath it's got like stalagmites and stalactites underneath? And does it have a glass container underneath? Why would God make such a weird object? Why not just make a planet? Why not just make a planet? Why make it so fucking complicated? It still has the same exact operational principle. You were stuck here. You were stuck here during the course of your life as a human being until you can graduate your education to the point, and one, you have to get rid of the threat of war so you don't become extinct. But you're still stuck here. You're still going through the trials and tribulations of being a human being and dealing with all of your sins and all of the, the implied goals of God on man. It doesn't need to be a flat disc. It doesn't. You can keep all of your religion. I feel very close to God. Very close to God. And I believe almost none of the Bible, none of the Old Testament, none of the New Testament. Do I believe the parables and the truths within the parables? Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. 100%. They're unified truths. Those man's greatest hour of deciphering God's intent. But I don't believe people have to walk on water for me to believe such a thing. But if God were to create this container, then the notion that anyone else could insert a moon with Project Bluebeam, some projectile thing, and I forgot to mention, because I forget this idiotic thing exists. You know, when you look up at the sky during the day, as I am right now, there's no clouds. It is absolutely chemtrail free, cloud free, which is the way California normally is 24/7, except during the El Nino years, which is I think what's going on now. We are seeing blue because of the frequency of light that's bouncing off the atmosphere and going into my eyes. Okay. When the moon is out during the day, it is obviously, even if it's 3,200 miles in the sky, it's up there, and there's a 3,200 miles of atmosphere if you're a flat earther before you see the moon. So you have a lot of blue registry in your eyeballs because there's a lot of blue between the moon and your eyes reflecting on the moon. Now, no one on our Facebook group has ever said, well, I can't say that. Not that many people, I think, have ever insinuated that the moon is transparent, but they see blue haze hue on top of the moon and they go, oh my God, this thing is transparent. And I think I figured out why people think that the star went through the moon, because they did a time lapse and there was a star a little bit ahead of the moon in one of the shots, and as they time lapsed in a single sequence, the star starts going in the belly of the previous exposure. I feel almost stupid at having ever believed the other thing, that it was remotely true. Plus, you do have the moon made of plasma inside. And again, all these things you think are craters, they're actually explosions from the inside, electrical pops from the inside. Based on our volcanic explosions here, I think we've got physical proof positive that craters are all electrical explosions from the interior, because it always leaves this little mound in the center of the crater, and that is not the residual of an impact. That is the residual of where it came from. Same thing that we have in all of our volcanic craters we have on Earth, that people haven't started living at the bottom and scraping that little thing off, right? Now, why, when the sun punches through clouds, we have a vector of light that goes down in a pyramid shape, and then when you have a rainbow happen, it's a perfect 180 turn with a spectrum of light in it, is sort of a contradictory notion, in my opinion. They say the Earth's on a tilt, but we don't have the equator relating to that tilt in terms of where the sun hits it the most, and why would there be a cold ice cap and a cold southern pole and a really warm interior area if the sun has anything to do with it, unless the sun is sending in rays vibrating the greenhouse gas layer, and then all of the equatorial lines are all based on a localized system that's within the greenhouse gas layer. It's probably documented that way, and I'm sounding like a moron repeating it. But the idea that planets are there as some deception to further promote deception, I think, is an impossible thing for me to believe. Now, we do have individuals that have filmed stars with cameras, and like I've said in previous episodes, man, these things look like plasma balls to me. They look like they're rotating plasma energy through some technique. You know, again, if you think it's the atmosphere creating the problem, I'm not sure why a particular star has a mohawk that goes all the way around it from the center, and the camera's moving left and right because the person, can't hold it perfectly still at 100x zoom or whatever, and plus the atmosphere is moving. Why would that mohawk stay in the same place? It should be fluttering all over the surface. And we see those too. We see the disturbances on the surface of a star in these zoomed up shots. We see them act spherical. So they're going around the surface of this thing. They're constantly jostling in a surface. And if any of you have seen something at the bottom of a pool and you see the refraction because the pool water is, not evenly dense, plus the surface is changing shape, so it's constantly jostling the image underneath the water. If you're looking at a softball on the bottom of perhaps a shallow end, it's going to lose its spherical properties throughout the refraction process. But when we zoom into stars, it still remains circular, and all the plasma energy it seems moving around whatever this light bulb is seems to remain spherical, even foreshortening in perspective around the edges. The fuck is that shit? So I think one of the interesting frontiers might be more the stars than the planets. Of course, the planets are interesting. Now here's the other thing for flat Earth theory as related to normal astronomy. We have engineering software, cosmology software, astronomy software that allows you to predict where any planet is at any point in time in our solar system. And the fucking things are there when they say they're there. We've never had this calculation fail once we figured it out. Well, those calculations are based on that body in space having a certain amount of gravity and orbiting, I should say, elliptically around our sun. Or at least, in the most crude sense, us. It does behave properly. It is not back to the old theory of the firmament dome, which has little spheres attached to the dome, with little spheres attached to that sphere to account for the moons. Doesn't make any sense, does it? I mean, really? Is the world really some steampunk machine? It's got a little espresso thing over on the side? I don't think so. The planet thing, outside of the traditional definition of planets, really becomes super duper messy. And it is not at the burden of all of the folks that have a non-messy definition to fight and combat those who have created a mess with this flat Earth theory. So there's a whole bunch of science you need to come up with that is going to make it beautiful and simplistic. Because if your hunch is right, that it's to obfuscate God, I find that a little hard to believe. You know, why would your creator create a situation where just believing in God is a super duper problematic situation? What's the fun in that? What's the point in that? Again, is it a big Job test for all of us constantly and constantly? One of our listeners on Facebook posed a great question. It's a very basic question, but I want to repeat it here. And he said, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? What would it be? Now, when I was younger, I would probably have had, 100 questions, 1,000 questions. It'd be simple things like, well, did dinosaurs exist? Is time travel possible? Have I lived a previous life? If I have lived a previous life, what's the most famous or infamous character I've ever played? Have I ever been anything like an ant or an alien in another planet? All those little kind of interesting little trivial questions. As I got older, it sort of simplified. And, when I moved to California, my boss sat me down once. We were doing some late IT work because one of our hard drives had a big problem. And I don't know why, we're drinking beers. I'm like 18 years old. I'm illegally doing this. And he's just chilling out with me, one of the best guys in the whole world. And he turned to me and he said, people believe in God. Maybe something was going on in the office or something that got the topic going. And he goes, I can't believe in a God that won't show up and say hello. He goes, I'm sorry if that makes me shallow, but I'm a man and I would never, ever create my world where I wouldn't commune with my people. So it haunted me for a long time of going, yeah, man, that does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Faith-based religion, it's like, so, for many of you, regardless of what model you believe in of how the universe works, you have always believed in God, and nothing will ever shake that out of your system. Ever, ever, ever. And so if God knows that you're going to constantly believe in God, then what would be the need to remain obfuscated from us because some guy down the street doesn't believe in God. I can't meet God. That seems like a fuck deal, right? Dude, like, God, just put that guy in his own little quarantine atheist box, his agnostic box or whatever, and put me with you, with all my buddies who totally believe in you, which I think is the majority of the world, and let's talk, man. Let's have a cigar together, man. Let's chill out. Doesn't happen, does it? And then I started thinking about it, and that was probably my only question that I ever really had that I think had any significance. Why don't you come down and talk to us? But then I answered my own question, or he answered it for me, or whatever. And the notion is, if God comes down here, then we cease to be human, because we cease to have we cease to have choice. Excuse me. I like choice. I really do. Imagine being an imperfect creature and having no more choice. And you know what is right and what is wrong. If you ever thought the Garden of Eden was real and this apple rule was real, then that's the world you would live in, is that everything around you, your temptations, your desires, your genetic programming would destroy you. If you believed, what if God ever told you that your thoughts are more sinful than your deeds? Or just as sinful as your deeds? Oh my God, could you imagine living in that world? Oh my God, I just sinned. You could not stop it. Be like the knights that say knee, right? God not being present in our universe, if God truly exists, is a favor. He gives us the instinct of right and wrong. Again, the common law, the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life: do no harm to others. Beautiful. Because that's a multi-dimensional statement, isn't it? Don't break anyone's heart. Don't betray someone. Don't physically hurt someone. Don't steal from someone. Anything that would hurt them, you don't do. But even that has some gray areas, doesn't it? Your kid wants to stay up all night. You know they can't. You know they need an education to be happy in this universe. Even if money didn't exist, they need something to fulfill their heart and their soul as a being. And without education, there's no method of doing that. I had an epiphany last night because there's this new problem that we have in the United States of America, which is due to the legalization of marijuana. And there's going to be a lot more legalization of a lot more drugs in the coming years as we track towards the brave new world that Huxley wrote about, a medicated society. If you can't get him to take your vaccinations and run to the doctor every fucking time you got a problem, well, what about a legalized drug? And what occurred to me was this. Let's draw a little line graph. Let's draw a line graph where right in the center of the line graph we have a neutral state of mind. It's not a positive state of mind. It's not a sad state of mind. It's not happy. It's not angry. And that's just you being a robot. And then you engage, if you have trade skills of any kind, any creativity of any kind, you're going to start maybe writing a book, singing a little lyric, writing some poetry, crafting something with your hands, even if it's just a little sandcastle at the beach. Maybe swimming is fun for you. But you start creating this as the little needle is going across, like a little Richter scale. You're going to start creating a little bump, a little calculus curve. And it's going to go up until you stop doing it that day, and then it starts going down. It goes back to neutral, perhaps. Probably we're not all neutral at any point in time. But if you're just content sitting in your chair, maybe that's neutral. Now that little bump of happiness, if you filled up the volumetric curve underneath, it's going to have a label. This is when I worked out this morning. This is when I helped a child finish their homework, craft something. Okay, so that was a curve of happiness with a purpose. As your day goes on, if you did 4 of those, you have 4 distinct humps. Depending on which one is more happy, generates more happiness and sadness or whatever, the humps change shape. They're bigger and longer. Maybe one's elongated. Maybe one doesn't go as high as the other, but it goes a lot longer. But now you take a kid who has no concept of forever. They're piercing themselves. They're tattooing themselves way before they have any fucking notion of what that's going to be like for the rest of their life. And I'm not against those things necessarily, but I think you should have a really good definition of permanent choices before you make permanent choices. Mike Tyson got a tattoo on his face as an adult, as a fighting machine. And so it works. He was an adult when he did it. He's got that animalistic personality. He's got a really cool, like, wild, barbed henna tattoo or whatever it is. He made that choice. A lot of you have tattoos and you love them. And that's because you probably conceived of it when you got it. And you know what it was like. You knew what it was going to be like to have it forever. Yours truly has a few tattoos. So, on top of each other. But now you introduce legalized marijuana. And once you legalize marijuana for a 21-year-old, you're legalizing it for all kids of all ages because they're going to get a hold of it. They got a big brother, a parent. It's available. They're going to get it from someone else's parent or whatever. Drug dealers will take it from anybody, won't they? And so now, every time a kid hits a pipe, hits a joint, eats an edible, whatever, you take that line graph and you reset it for a 24-hour period. Now you have these temporary spikes, go up and down, up and down, up and down, all fucking day long, as much as they pound that stuff. Problem, if you filled up the volumetric curve underneath one of these highs, what purpose does the high have? 0%. 0% purpose. It is simply playing with your brain to go up and down, up and down. You're tired, you're eating all the time, and you're fucking with the very mechanism in your mind that makes you either happy or sad. You're draining your dopamine all day long, and you know what happens? Your brain will start to get out of whack. Why do people become diabetic? Because insulin gets fucked up by eating too much sugar. You can make yourself diabetic if you eat too much sugar. Once you blow out your insulin index one time, you can be a type 1 diabetic for the rest of your life. And then if you go to the next level, you're type 2. You get the little machine stuck in your thigh poking you with a needle all day long. I mention this because it's sort of messing with the fabric of humanity. No one wants to be told what they can and can't do. It's their sovereign right to do whatever they want with their bodies. You know, a kid without cancer will read a piece of research that says that weed cures cancer, and so they smoke it all day. Well, because it cures cancer, man. Well, do you have fucking cancer? Well, no, but I never will get it because I smoke weed all the time. Well, okay, all right. You have a job? Well, not right now, but well, I do, but it's not the one I want to keep. You know, it's just a stepping stone, and I'm depressed all the time, and so I'm running around the internet, pissing and moaning on top of people's theories or whatever, because I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled. What planets are, what shape the Earth is, where we are in the universe, it's sort of a, to quote the social justice warriors of this goddamn planet, which I have no respect for, it's a privileged concept to call a problem, wouldn't you say? If you believe in God, then you believe in God. If I said the world's a tetrahedron, you don't care. I'm here. I'm okay. I'm not falling off some edge of the universe over here. Planets aren't causing me problems. The sun and the moon, it's up there. It's doing its thing. One of the sad themes that we're dealing with right now is the theme of the divide. I've made a whole episode about it, I'm pretty sure. And I deal with it in the comments all the time. I deal with it in the Facebook page. Heliocentric folks are very angry at flat earth folks, and flat earth folks are actually pretty used to it now. The globetards is what they call them, right? Which is great. I mean, it's not great. We're calling people names, of course, but it's just that it's become a comical thing instead of a big butthurt thing, I think, for most people. Why do I complain incessantly about the moon hoax? As one of our commenters recently posted this beautiful comment, I couldn't possibly quote it without just reading it to you, but he just made a great point that we are sitting here hostages because we're lying to ourselves about science. The only way that we're ever going to figure out where we are is to make space travel ubiquitous to society. Just as you would get in your car and drive to Walgreens, a drugstore here in America, and buy something and come home, that's what it needs to be for traveling to the moon, taking a little, cruise to Saturn, just like in Fifth Element, the little cruise ship that was out there in space. Beautiful, beautiful physical example of the way that it should be. We have a tremendous amount of issues to resolve here on Earth. I think we are well within this beautiful thing called the Great Awakening. And that Great Awakening is the facilitation of truth. People are starting to think for themselves now more than ever. And I think one of the biggest reasons why the truth movement will never stop is that, one, we're a growing force of people that are trying to look for the truth. And, just to be clear, because I'm busting everyone's balls in this episode, flat earthers should continue the research in flat earth. Flat earthers should continue to solve or try to solve for the physical models that are absolutely beautiful and ethereal electrical universe with heliocentric balls that we live on called planets. That's completely perfect now. Not the normal science, no Big Bang, no black holes, no meteorites from outer space, just beautiful symmetry in the universe. So you need that same beautiful symmetry for your flat earth, and you've got to explain more than just the easy stuff. Okay, if the sun and the moon are running around each other at 3,200 miles, they are the same size. I understand, man, trust me. The fact that the moon perfectly eclipses the sun, and I have an episode called The Moon in season 2, it is the paradox that is just, for me, it is impossible to believe without some sort of celestial intervention of some sort, either be it aliens or God. In terms of aliens as it relates to planets, what's interesting with flat Earth is that I do find plenty of people who believe in flat Earth that believe in aliens. And so then I'm kind of asking the question, well, where the hell are they coming from? Oh, a very small proportion of people go, well, they're interdimensional. That's why they just pop out of nowhere. Okay, all right. I guess if everything's interdimensional, then shit, man, you can have whatever reality that you want. Those of you who are in the Matrix, believe me, I have a tremendous respect for anyone who's sitting at home thinking we're inside of a computer, and therefore nothing has to make any sense. It's all an illusion. Totally understand why people will go there. Most of us who study anthropology and the missing link, and the Egyptians especially, you start to realize maybe we were dropped off. Maybe we're some hybrid with some outside life such as an alien and the indigenous population of Earth. By the way, I had a request from a listener to name the cigar I'm smoking on a particular day. This particular one is a My Father, and it's the lighter Las Antillas brand. So you guys can see that. There you go. That's the stick I'm smoking. Beautiful, beautiful New World smoke. Very mellow, very one-dimensional, but very nice. The most basic statement from a flat earther that one has to respect is, and there's sort of a really, I don't want to insult anybody, but I would say there's a less intelligible way it's being said, and then there's a very intelligent way it's being said. One is, prove to me there's curvature. And if you just leave that statement out by itself, it doesn't sound smart. But when you talk about the laser tests that have been done over bodies of water, over frozen bodies of water, then you have more of an empirical proof model that's what you're talking about, is to say, look, if I can shoot a laser across a lake in Russia that's 114, 140 miles long, can't remember how long it is, and it hits a target on the other side, then that's an impossibility if there's the curvature of Earth. Even though the refraction of the atmosphere does account for some bending, for it to be perfectly bending around the surface of the Earth to hit the target, when you can see it with your eyes, it does seem like there's something to be questioned there. If one believes that there is this superior technology out there that's being hidden that can project things into space, especially the moon, my God. All these videos that claim that the moon has been turning off and turning on, all this other stuff, they're really super stupid videos that I've seen so far. If you got a really good one, link it in the comments down below, because I haven't seen it. There is a listener that posted that the Greeks have text that says, before the moon, the era before the moon. All right. The Egyptians seem to have a complete grasp of the moon and the sun in their timetables of all the pharaohs that go back 35,000 years, not 3,200 years. See Graham Hancock's research for that. Apparently, it's Orange County Aviation Day. When I think about, superior technology that's being hidden, of course we know that these inventions have been swallowed up in patent offices and corporations sit on them. It's like a film studio buying your script because they have a lesser script coming out and they don't want the better script to be made, so they buy yours and they sit on it and they never make it. I just don't think we would have such flubby false flags if there's a bunch of amazing technology out there. There wouldn't be any mistakes. They're so advanced. Wars wouldn't go on the way that they do. If there's an enemy, they just pull out this technology, create a cover story, which is that the conventional war took care of it, but it's really being fought from space. It's being fought by invisible soldiers, all this other stuff, and everyone would be dead instantaneously. Assad would be way out of Syria by now. There wouldn't be these giant bloodbaths because all this technology would exist to just snap your fingers and make it happen. And those wars are being created by the most powerful people on planet Earth, so why would they hesitate to use better methods? If they wanted to depopulate the world according to the Georgia Guidestones, wouldn't it have already happened? Remember in 2014 they inserted a stone? In fact, I think it happened after 2014, but someone got in there and mitered in a new stone that says 2014. Scary. What happened in 2014? So anyway, I think you feel me. It's all over the place a little bit, but again, I think that for me, planets are planets. For now, I'm a heliocentric, expanding Earth person. Do I think that deception's running wild in these areas of science? Oh yeah. Peter's projection map alone is proof that there are liars out there that are hanging on to their careers. The CERN Hadron Collider looking for Big Bang echoes, gravity waves being blamed on non-ethereal causes is just asinine. Asinine. We're not allowed to have the fundamentals of the universe because it would free us from all the tyranny and dependency that we have on these individuals. They would lose control. And because you kind of have to be smart to play with technology of any kind, all right, so smart people get great technology. Hopefully religious dogma wouldn't turn it into some giant super weapon to, commit genocide all over the world. We've been very close at times with just using the low-hanging fruit technology to create one race on this planet. A little freaky, isn't it? So regardless of what camp you're in, just make sure that whatever you have, my advice is to make sure you have a completely homogeneous, well-explained model for everything. Because right now, with Ether, you got it all. You have a full-blown universe. Now, it doesn't validate every fake photo coming in from NASA, but it would account for a solar system, the way that we have been taught. Anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. That's where you can change from audio to video. There is a locked Facebook group, which is awesome. A Twitter account in case you want to get your feed that way. There's also a Patreon page if you want to tip and support the show. That's all I'm going to say today. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over and out.